Alright, so in this video, I'm going to go through 10 of the most important college football games for the 2024 regular season. It's a little bit different in 2024 with the expanded playoff. A lot of these teams are going to be given leeway considering a lot of these are Big Ten and SEC games, in conference games. Those teams can likely lose 3 games and still make the playoff, but the playoff, the expansion of it is extremely necessary, but still some of these games may be a little bit less meaningful in terms of the regular season. The playoff will make up for it though. But let's kick it off at number 10. How about a neutral site game? I'm going with LSU taking on USC. I find this game very intriguing. This is the week 1 game at Allegiant Stadium. Miller Moss coming in, very likely to be USC's starting QB. They've got a brand new defensive look with Alex Grinch out, and then LSU going to be replacing their Heisman winner, Jaden Daniels, also their top 2 receivers. You know, LSU is sitting there. They're a potential playoff team, even with everything they're replacing, if they can keep the losses low, and this is a very key non-conference game considering how tough the SEC is. Big game for LSU, and then also for USC. USC joining the Big Ten, trying this new look. Lincoln Riley, kind of a really down year this past year with Caleb Williams as a junior. That'll be a big week 1 game. One of those teams is going to have a huge leg up. They're going to get a big week 1 win, a quality win, and they're going to be unscathed, possibly going into brutal conference play there. Moving on to number 9, it is Arizona at Utah. Now, this is technically a Big 12 game. This game happening in late September. So, Arizona, the situation surrounding them, they were the media darling, the offseason darling. They lose their head coach last minute to Washington. Utah returning Cam Rising. Everyone expects them to be really good. The Big 12 is going to be a complete mosh pit. But this is going to be a huge game because these are 2 of the top contenders in that conference. I think a lot of people expect Utah to win this conference. There could be 5 or 6 different teams that could have a chance at it. Arizona at Utah, that's going to be one of the bigger games in the Big 12 conference. I have it as the biggest game right now, and it is number 9 on my list of most important games. Moving on to number 8, it is Clemson traveling to FSU. This game happening in early October. So FSU, right now, kind of a fringe top 20 team. They lost so much to the draft. They're coming off that 63-3 loss. They got DJ Uiagalelei, the transfer. I guess now we can coin the phrase the double transfer. This is going to be his 3rd team now. And then Clemson, a really sneaky team going into 2024. Nobody expects Clemson to do anything because everyone's been burned by Clemson the past 2 years, thinking they're going to rebound, and they haven't. But Clemson, they're going to be a veteran team. They're going to have a really good defense, and they're playing in a weak conference. If Clemson can go on the road and win at FSU, remember this past year when FSU went to Clemson, Clemson thoroughly dominated that game. Now, they lost in overtime, but that was with Jordan Travis and with FSU having everyone. It's going to be harder Clemson going on the road, but I still think they have a chance to beat FSU, and if they get, that's a huge win if they're able to get it on the road. Wide open ACC, it'll be a big game either way. Moving on to number 7, it is Florida State traveling to Notre Dame. This is a non-conference game happening in early November, so FSU being in the ACC, with all they're replacing, you would expect them to run up a decent win total in that conference, but this is a non-conference game on the road at Notre Dame. We would favorite Notre Dame right now. There's a lot of hype surrounding Notre Dame. A lot of people think they're going to be in the playoff. It's interesting because Notre Dame is an independent. That actually might benefit them for the 12-team playoff because you would think if they go 10-2, they're an auto lock to make it. You know, even without the extra data point, the conference championship, just go 10-2, you're in. This would be a big win for them at home. And we've seen Notre Dame the past 2 or 3 years have some huge home blowout night wins. If you guys remember, they had that win against Clemson. That was during the pandemic, but then last year they destroyed Caleb Williams and USC. Notre Dame with Riley Leonard, Marcus Freeman, they're calmly trying to build something. It's going to be a huge year next year with the playoff expansion. Their fans expect to make the playoff, and if they don't, there's going to be, a lot of pressure on Marcus Freeman. Moving on to number 6, it is Ohio State traveling to Beaver Stadium to take on Penn State. This is always a huge game when Ohio State plays in possibly the whiteout. Now, we don't know if this is going to be a whiteout game or not. Will Fox Big Noon try and infest and take this over, or will it be on NBC? Because remember, the Big Ten has the schedule set up next year where it's Big Noon, then the 3:30 CBS game, then the 7:30 NBC game. I'm guessing NBC is going to get this game, and it's going to be a whiteout for Penn State. That's a huge home environment. Ohio State, we know how loaded they are. They're a virtual lock to make the playoff, but this is big for Penn State. You're getting the Buckeyes at home. You've got a more veteran team. You've got a multi-year starting quarterback. They need to break through. It's a very odd schedule for Penn State. They do not face Michigan next year with all the teams joining the Big Ten. It's kind of warped up the schedule a little bit, but this game is happening right after Halloween, November 2nd. It is the sixth most important game. Moving on to number 5, it is Texas traveling to Michigan. Early season, week 2, Michigan replacing a lot. Replacing Jim Harbaugh, replacing J.J. McCarthy. We have not seen a big transfer portal exodus from Michigan. A lot of that is due to Jim Harbaugh purposefully dragging out, deciding to go to the NFL, which has really limited a lot of, potential transfers from Michigan because the semester has started, and I'm guessing there will be some transfers leaving Michigan because of the Jim Harbaugh situation possibly happening in the spring window. But you also have to think Michigan hired in-house, so they're going to be able to keep a lot of their players, and Michigan is still going to have a really talented team. You've got Will Johnson, as long as he doesn't transfer, Colston Loveland, Donovan Edwards. They should be solid. I think Michigan is going to be a good 9-3 team next year, and then you've got Texas. They're expected to go like 11-1. I would say 10-2 actually, being in the SEC, but they're going to have a preseason rank with Quinn Ewers back. I would say at number 3 behind Ohio State and Georgia right now in the AP poll. But yeah, that's a huge non-conference game. Texas traveling to the Big House. That comes in at number 5. That is week 2, very early on in the season. Moving on to number 4, it is Georgia traveling to Alabama. This game happening relatively early in the season. This is the rare situation. We always had the SEC East, the SEC West, never faced off. Georgia, Alabama very rarely played in the regular season. Well, it is changing, and now they're going to be facing each other. Alabama, obviously the situation surrounding Nick Saban retiring, losing a few different 5-stars to the portal, losing a few recruits as well. I think the vibe around Alabama football right now is they're a fringe playoff team. Certainly they still have absurd talent. If you were to list like the top 5 most talented rosters going into next year, even with what Alabama lost, they're probably, I would say, number 3. It's Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Alabama 3. Even with what they lost, they're still number 3. So they're still going to be really talented, and they get Georgia at home. Could this be DeBoer's big first win, beating Georgia? We know how talented Georgia's going to be. They should be the number 1 overall team in the preseason with Carson Beck back. We know how well Kirby Smart recruits. They won back-to-back national titles, and then they barely missed the playoff this past year and then annihilated FSU in the Orange Bowl. It's going to be a huge game. That's an in-conference game in SEC play early in the season. Moving on to number 3, it is the game. It is Michigan traveling to Ohio State. Now, you can make the argument this is number 1, but I do expect Michigan to regress a little bit. I mean, even if you want to say like Michigan and Ohio State are both going to be undefeated, the game technically is not that important. Well, it's still important for a bye because obviously you want to get that first bye. You want to be one of the top 4 seeds, but in terms of making the playoff, if Michigan and Ohio State both have 1 loss or are both undefeated, the game result is inconsequential in terms of if they'll make the playoff or not. They'll both still be in. So it's kind of hard to look at this, but you could be seeing a situation where Michigan goes into this game with 2 losses, needing to beat Ohio State. I would expect Ohio State probably to go into this game with 0 or 1 loss. And it's obviously the game is huge. Ohio State, the 3 straight losses to Michigan. Everyone's saying Ryan Day, he's got a way more talented team this year with all the transfer portal stuff, with the NIL investment Ohio State has done. Ryan Day needs to beat Michigan at home. He's going to be the favorite. Certainly anytime Ohio State and Michigan face, it's the best rivalry in college football. That's not even debatable. So it's coming in at number 3. Moving on to number 2, it is Georgia traveling to Texas. Another game that's similar to Ohio State and Michigan. I would expect both of these teams in a 12-team playoff scenario to easily make it, but this is one of those rare kind of conference games because Texas and Oklahoma are joining. Georgia going on the road, facing Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian. This is going to be a huge game. And obviously, when you're talking about this is a preseason 1v2 or 1v3 matchup, because I'm guessing Georgia is going to be preseason number 1. I would think Ohio State's going to be number 2 and Texas would be number 3, but you could make an argument that Texas might be number 2. So it's going to be a huge matchup, and it comes in at number 2. And then the number 1, the most important matchup, in my opinion, college football, the best matchup of 2024. It is Ohio State traveling to Oregon. Now, Ohio State, we know they're going to be probably a top 3, top 2 team. Oregon is probably going to be ranked 5th or 6th, getting Dillon Gabriel, who, by the way, I think is very underrated. That's a really good quarterback. They also got Dante Moore. They've gotten a few more transfers. We know the investment that Oregon has made into this program. Dan Lanning denying Alabama basically and saying, no, I want to stay here. I want to build this team. And they get the Buckeyes at home a few years after beating Ohio State in the Horseshoe. This game happening in mid-October. It's going to be huge. I would expect both of these teams to make the playoff, but Ohio State going on the road, West Coast. I'm guessing this is going to be, well, you're looking at either a 3:30 or a 7:30 start time. I'm guessing this is 7:30 on NBC, which is going to make it 4:30 Pacific local time in Eugene. But either way, those are my top 10 most important college football games of 2024. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.